Luca opened his Bible when he finally got home, turning to the book that brought him the most conflicted feelings. Even on his worst days, he read this book because it still offered clarity amidst the conviction. "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." He read the verse with a heavy heart. He didn't know why he still read it, knowing he wasn't included in that promise, but the beauty and wonder of one day seeing God was something even he couldn't ignore. He set his Bible aside, laying his head back on one of his arms while the other was draped across his broad chest. He stared up at his ceiling, through the sky roof, and at the array of stars scattered across the clear, midnight blue sky. He rubbed his weary eyes before saying, "Why did I have to be born like this? Why couldn't I just be normal so that I wouldn't have to carry this burden of imprisonment? You said if I sought after you, I would find you. Am I not searching hard enough?" He waited for an answer, or tried to, but a shadow dashed in his peripheral vision, coming from his window. Warm air blew in from where he kept it open. He narrowed his eyes at the window, waiting to see if something would appear, like a bird or something. But all was still. He got up and shut the window, locking it for extra measure. You could never be too careful as the leader of the Ladri de Ladri. Luca stood with his back facing the entrance of the room, his torso resting on the ledge of the window. His eyes closed as a soft breeze blew by, ruffling his hair and bathing his face with gentle embraces. "Should I come back?" someone asked from beside him, and he straightened. Aya looked up at him with an unknown expression in her eyes. "I'd prefer you just get it out now," he said, rather cautiously, failing to anticipate her unexpected words and attitude. When all she did was stare at him, he raised an eyebrow. "Well?" She waited a long moment to respond, and when Luca thought she'd ignore him, she answered, rather reluctantly, "I followed you last night. Wanted to see where you went off to each night. Perhaps to a wife and children or something like that. But I wasn't expecting to see you." She trailed off as if confused by her own words. "Do Leo and Danny know?" Her unexpected question managed to momentarily cast aside his concern about her indifference to such intrusive actions. He instead grew defensive. "Why would they? My business is my own." He made sure to give her a pointed stare for extra measure. She ignored it, staring out the window. "So, you're a Christian?" "And what if I am? How would that benefit you?" "It doesn't." Her voice was less hard but not soft. Just as quick, it was back to stony. "But I worry for the longevity of this group." His own voice hardened. "Keep your worry to yourself," he all but spat. "And if you follow me again, I'll make sure you regret it. We're only working together until I can give you back the heirloom, so don't think you can go around giving orders as if you're in charge now." He was about to leave when she didn't reply immediately, but her remark stopped him. "Your words from last night didn't exactly sound like you wanted to be in charge either." "That's none of your business," he growled at her while letting his eyes dart to the door to make sure no one was listening. He approached her, demanding her attention. "If you think of saying a single word, I'll—" "Don't worry, your secret's safe with me, leader." The title was on her tongue, jabbing him in his chest with an invisible finger. He only glared at her before leaving, hoping and praying she'd make good on her condescending promise. He wasn't exactly prepared to have that conversation with anyone yet, especially because the meeting was drawing nearer and he needed to let Danny and Leo in on his plot sooner rather than later. He didn't know why, but a sense of foreboding was bubbling in the pit of his stomach. "Are you nuts?" Danny's voice bounced off the walls as he stared at Luca in their meeting room. Leo, as expected, was overly quiet, but Luca could see visible wheels turning in his mind. Whether that was good or bad, he wasn't sure. "You can't do this, Luca," Danny continued, running a hand down his stubbled jaw. A certain look passed his face that grabbed Luca's attention. "Enzo will kill you, and he won't stop until—" "It doesn't have to end that way, Danny," Luca reasoned. "Once I give him the money from Ophelia's rose, he won't even blink at the heirloom's absence." They all knew Enzo was the kind of man who loved money and power, no matter how it was obtained. "You don't know that." Danny began to pace, running a frustrated hand through his black curls. Luca turned to Leo. "What do you think?" Leo stared at the ground, seemingly lost in thought. At last he said, "I don't think you should do it, Luca." His usually stony voice was filled with so much concern that Luca nearly considered listening to him. But in truth, he realized, this could be his only way to escape the life he so desperately longed to be free from. He believed God was opening a big door for him, one he'd be an idiot to let close. "I've already made up my mind." Luca kept his voice firm, his expression unreadable. "I'm only telling you in case you want to join me." "And when are you planning on doing this?" Danny questioned, seemingly done with his pacing. Luca couldn't deny the change in his partner's demeanor, something that put him on edge, as if Luca should watch his back around him. Unlike Leo, Danny, too, was born into this wretched life. Considering Danny was only 23 years old, it made Luca pity him more than he pitied himself. Danny was younger than Luca and Leo, yet he took on a lot of responsibility. Whether Luca openly admitted it or not, Danny was like a little brother to him. He cared for him. But if this is where they had to part ways, Luca would have no choice but to live with it. He wasn't going back to this life if he could successfully escape. Luca decided to answer Danny's question despite the silent warnings going off in the back of his mind. "First thing next week, meaning we'll finally have our hands cleaned of our unwanted guests." He wanted to add in a quick, "No offense" for Leo, but decided against it. His mind unexpectedly went to Aya, and he imagined himself not having to worry about her dark presence lingering in some corner of the room. Another part, however, wondered where she'd go after this, what she'd do once she acquired the heirloom she sought. One small part of him, against his better judgment, imagined him running away with her. He shook his head to clear the ridiculous thought, attempting to ignore the quickening of his pulse at the idea of following the woman wherever she went, instead focusing on his present situation. "I'm in," Leo said rather unexpectedly. He looked every bit serious, but then again, when hadn't he? Luca let his eyes ask the question of where that would leave him in Brooklyn if things went south, but Leo simply pretended not to notice. "And you?" He turned to where Danny had been standing, catching sight of his back as he wordlessly left the room. He couldn't bring himself to play Big Brother and have a one-on-one, so he decided to fill Leo in on his entire plan. He only had a week, after all. Luca stood on his apartment balcony, letting his thoughts run as wild as the breeze that ran fingers through his dark hair. He propped himself up on his elbows, staring down at the passing traffic. Somehow he found peace in the sight and again started to wonder if that could be his reality one day. He released a deep breath. From the service he attended earlier that week, he remembered the words of the pastor. Specifically, a verse he read. "Therefore, if the Son makes you free, you shall be free indeed." It was peculiar how often the pastor seemed to be singling Luca out, but this time he was too stunned to notice. The pastor spoke of freedom through Christ, and Luca had never longed for anything more in his life. If he could have this freedom that was so passionately spoken of, he'd hold on and never let it go. He'd cherish it, and the one who granted it to him. He'd never steal again, never willingly break another rule, if only to be free. Freedom was so close that he could almost taste it, could almost grab it with his bare hands. But in the back of his mind, he was reminded that he couldn't have it, no matter how hard he tried. Luca lowered the hand he unknowingly stretched out as if the answer to his problems would drop into it from God himself. His muscles tensed when he felt an unwanted presence in his room and heard the shuffle of feet he knew was intentionally made known. Without turning, he said, "What do you want?" "To talk." He turned then and was met with eyes he would never get tired of looking into, if only to admire the beauty of how hazel they were. Surprisingly, he wasn't greeted with a glare, so he relaxed a fraction. "You have to stop coming to my house uninvited. I'm tempted to get a restraining order against you," he commented while fixing his attention on his previous view. To his evident empty threat, he received silence. When Aya felt ready to speak, she joined his side and released a soft breath. Leo says you're going to get back the heirloom next week. I am. So then we'll be parting ways soon. Luca thought he imagined the reluctance in her tone and looked at her expression to double check. He wasn't sure what emotion looked back at him. Maybe a mixture of something. Not knowing what else to say, he mumbled, "We are, but you'll have what you want." Her response was delayed, but it hit him in the gut regardless. "And what will you have?" His heart pounded at the heavy question, but he wasn't ready to answer her just yet. He changed the subject. "How's Brooklyn taking the news? I'm sure you know that she and Leo are dating?" She finished what he wouldn't with a quiet scoff. "I told her not to trust you guys, but she has a thing for tall, dark, and handsome men with tattoos and trauma. And obviously, he saw something he liked too." She decided to answer his first question. "I never know what she's thinking, but I'm sure she'll get over it. She always does." They fell into silence, but it wasn't awkward. Just loaded. He couldn't kill the feeling that she didn't barge into his house unexpectedly without having something to say. So he waited until she spoke again, which didn't take long. "You're probably wondering why I'm here." She didn't let him answer, but he could see the turmoil happening in her mind, as if she were considering whether to tell him something or not. She came to a decision. "I want to tell you a story." The tension he previously felt had loosened even more, and he made himself comfortable, telling her he was all ears. She took a breath and then another, and started her story. She spoke of a young girl who was born into a gang, Spanish to be exact. Instead of her father being the leader, however, it was her mother. The young girl's father was unknown, but her mother was well known. Too well known. One night, the leader was brutally beaten within inches of her life, but she managed to tell her daughter one last thing before she succumbed to her injuries. She told her daughter to get back what was stolen, a precious heirloom. One so precious, it turned brother against brother. She made her daughter promise to get it back, no matter what, and to trust no one. So, of course, the girl agreed. She trained, strategized, and studied for the very day she'd return what was rightfully hers. But before that day came, the enemy managed to break in and steal another important thing from her, her brother, her twin brother. Distraught that she had no one left, she vowed to not only retrieve the heirloom, but also her long-lost brother, and she wouldn't rest until she succeeded. Luca stared at Aya as realization dawned on him. "You're the daughter of Spain." It wasn't a question, because he knew the answer, but he felt he needed to say it aloud. Aya simply nodded, turning her gaze to him. There was something desperate in her eyes, and a part of him ached at knowing there was nothing else he could do. But maybe there was. "I can help you find him," he blurted, catching them both by surprise. Knowing he couldn't take it back now that he said it, he dug himself in further. "After we retrieve the heirloom, I'll help you look for your brother." It was a promise. "Luca!" She seemed in awe as she said his name for the first time since they'd met, at least to his knowledge. A strange warmth blossomed in his chest at the way his name sounded on her lips, and he decided he'd never grow tired of hearing it if it came from her. She scanned his face as if looking for a lie. He could be long gone by now. "There's no harm in checking, is there?" She quietly agreed. "But what about you? Will you need any help with retrieving the heirloom? I can—" He stopped her with a raised hand. "I'm flattered, but it will be too dangerous. I'd rather you go somewhere safe until then. I doubt it won't turn out ugly in some form." He blinked in surprise at how tender he sounded, but realized he meant it. What would he do if Aya were hurt because of him? Or worse? The thought pained him more than if he were to lose his own life. He silently promised to keep her out of harm's way, at least until he completed his part. He'd soon be executing a plan that could lead to utter disaster, but his faith in God, not in himself, made him hold on and believe that this whole ordeal didn't have to end in death. But even he knew that was wishful thinking. Luca drove Aya home as the sun began to set, and she didn't protest. He felt as if they'd finally come to an understanding. and a little more than that. She didn't look at him with malice or contempt anymore. She looked at him in a way that made him feel weird on the inside, and he could only imagine that he reciprocated that look as best as he could. As they entered the house, they were set on instant alert at the sound of shouting. With one glance at each other, they went to investigate. Luca found the nearest weapon, and Aya followed suit. The noise appeared to be coming from their meeting room. The closer they got, the clearer the voices became. He recognized Leo's voice and Brooklyn's, but he'd never heard Leo sound as angry as he did. He paused outside the room and plastered himself against a wall blanketed by shadows, lightly placing his arm in front of Aya to make her do the same. It wasn't hard to hear them at their volume. "What if you're killed?" came Brooklyn's angry question. Luca sensed more than anger in her tone. "You said so yourself. They wouldn't hesitate to kill you if they caught wind of what you guys are planning to do." "Do I have a choice, Brooklyn?" "Luca is he's like a brother to me. I can't let him do this alone. I won't." "You do have a choice." Brooklyn's voice lowered, and hurt overpowered her anger. "You've just decided which one was more important to you." Leo let out a tense breath. "Brooklyn, that's not—" "Then choose, Leo." Her voice rose again. Footsteps sounded, and Luca figured she stepped closer to him. "Me or Luca? Me or this stupid gang?" It grew eerily silent for more than a moment, and then there was a loud crash. From the sounds of it, something had definitely broken, and Luca could only hope it wasn't the overly expensive technology they had installed just last year. Another crash was followed by another, and then it grew silent again. "Don't make me choose!" Leo sounded defeated, and Luca suddenly wanted to defend him. But if he came out now, then they'd know he was listening in. There was more silence before Brooklyn said, "You already did." There was such a cold finality in her words that Luca felt a shiver run along his spine. She sounded closer to the door, and he tensed. "I won't stand around and watch you throw your life away. Once we have the heirloom, Aya and I will be gone. So I guess this is goodbye." Luca knew for sure their cover was about to be blown, but Brooklyn's steps suddenly faltered. Or more so, halted. Leo spoke from a closer distance to the door as well. "I can't let you leave, Brooklyn." Leo had never sounded so desperate, and Luca knew it had to be the effect of love. His suspicions were confirmed when Leo said, "I love you." Leo's next words were rushed as if he didn't have much time. "This will be the last time. I'll help Luca and then we can run away somewhere. Just the two of us. No more heists. No more crooked living. I'll get an honest job and we can get married and buy a home." Brooklyn sniffled. "Really?" "Really?" Leo echoed. To save himself from further trauma, Luca motioned for Aya to follow him so that Leo and Brooklyn could have their moment. Luca couldn't deny the happiness he felt at Leo wanting to live a better life, but he also felt a certain sadness at the realization that he may never see him again after this. But it motivated him even more to make sure everything went smoothly, for Leo, Danny, Brooklyn, and Aya's sake.